I don't know if I'm camera ready, but here we go.
I think we're recording. Yeah. Wait, does it go to a single red beep? Okay.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
I can see that it's recording. Yeah.
okay, cool. So yeah, so my thing is trying to embed more of a wellness component in the schools, especially now, because
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that our counselors are overwhelmed, and there is the part of it where teachers are already doing a lot in the classroom, but I don't even think that it's that we would have to add that much more. It would
Mm-hmm.
be not really in the classroom. So I'm sort of taking this path to like interview different people that I know that do, like yourself, that do add wellness for our spirits and our souls, and how to kind of bring that into a public school environment, just because I think it's needed. And I think there are places that do it right now, but I don't think it's that consistent, and I don't think it's
Yeah.
been that successful.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's probably like with like funding cuts, it's probably the first thing to go is anything like
Yeah,
wellness is considered extra.
I know. Yeah. But actually, I teach at a high school, and that's like the first thing that like prohibits someone from getting to class.
Yep.
There's so many things that students will say to not go to class, like they'll ask for the nurse instead. They know something's not
Mm-hmm.
right with them,
Right.
but all their like vocabulary can ask for is like the counselor or the nurse.
Right.
And so the nurse's office can only hold like 1 to 2 people, and
Yes.
the counselor can only see one person at a time. So yeah. Anyways, I'm just happy to have you here. So um,
Sure.
Rachel, I know you for so many things. Um, but if you could just go ahead and like introduce yourself, just for the record, and sort of talk about your journey to journaling. Journey to journaling.
Journey to journaling. Sure. Uh, well, my name is Rachel Levin. I'm a writer by profession, and I mostly work as a journalist and as an editor for people who are looking to elevate their personal, professional writing for their goals. So, writing has always been a really important part of my life and my career, and I've been journaling for about more than 20 years consistently, about 22 years consistently, almost every day. And I studied psychology as an undergrad, and so I'm really interested in the wellness aspects of writing, like the intersection between psychology, literature, and the self. And so I decided to undertake training at the Center for Journal Therapy, which is an entity started by the pioneering journal therapist Kathleen Adams. And they teach a variety of courses and they do certifications in journal writing and journal therapy. So I'm now certified to teach a course called Journal to the Self, which is a course that gives participants a toolbox of techniques for beginning or deepening a journal writing process or
That's
practice.
amazing.
That's a little background.
Yeah, I actually never knew all of the information that you told me, and I was very curious because I know that you did the online Zoom, and
Mhm.
so what that with that workshop, I wasn't able to go for all the days, but it looked super therapeutic, and I did want to ask you about that, how the outcome was, just
Mhm.
because I feel like, yesterday we just got the notice that we would be starting our school year online.
Mm. Yeah.
So, do you feel like that was still pretty effective, even though the workshop was online?
I do think so. I think it's always more interactive when you can gather in person. It's easier to interact, right? There's obviously aspects of Zoom that make it difficult to spontaneously interact because you have to unmute yourself and there are these pauses and people have tech issues and it's not as seamless. It can be a little more passive, but I think it's still better than not meeting at all. And there is a way in which I think we created community. One of the participants from that journal session I did, that was sort of like a crisis management journaling session series to combat the immediate stressors of adjusting to COVID and social distancing. So, one of those students is now in my Journal to the Self class at Pasadena City College. So I think, I think it definitely, I mean, that's just one example of a way in which it connected someone to a journaling community who I'd never met before, and it's just an online contact. And she was across the country. I never would have met her, if we were meeting in person. I met her and, she's in Tennessee. So it has its limitations, but I think it's still possible.
Mm-hmm. I think I found it so endearing that the women there were so open. That was my initial impression when
Mm-hmm.
I joined.
Yes.
And so, one of the things I noticed that you did was kind of create such a safe space for that. And
Mm.
so, what would be, I guess, some advice for a teacher or anybody with dealing with young people? How do you just even start it off and help with the safety factor and the feeling free
Mm-hmm.
enough to be able to go there within thinking and journaling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think journal writing is really important for young students. I have not taught journal writing specifically to young students. I teach college age and above, from college age to senior citizen in these journals of the self classes. But I have some exposure to. I was um, part of the National Writing Project that has different centers throughout the country. So I was involved in the one at Cal State LA, the Los Angeles Writing Project, and there was a lot of use of journaling. That's for K through 12 education, and there was a lot of use of journaling in the classroom that was encouraged because when you're writing a paper, you're writing for your teacher, you're writing for an audience, it's very different than when you're writing for yourself. And journaling, when I do teach writing classes to young people in community college, like composition classes, I find that they often don't have confidence in their writing because they feel like they're not good at it, and so writing becomes this very intimidating thing. Um, and so they stare at the blank page and they feel all these fears of being evaluated. So I think, to mark the journal off as a safe space where the student is able to write without any evaluation, they're not writing for an audience, they're writing for themselves, is a really useful way to help them make that transition to journal writing.
Okay, so like I'm walking into like a class, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and I think as you were talking, I sort of realized that it probably isn't that much different for a high school student because they're kind of treated like adults,
Mm-hmm.
the way that
Yeah.
we expect them to turn in everything on their own, and they're logging in and they're writing their teachers. And so I don't think it would be that different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so how do you initially start your workshops? Do you have icebreakers? Do you like introduce yourself and your own journey? Like, what would I do? Just because I feel like it takes a lot of me to be vulnerable first, to ask
Mm-hmm.
someone else to go there.
Yeah.
And I'm not used to that at a public, in high school. Like, I'm not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we just had our first Journal to the Self class for this term at PCC on Sunday. So that I think is a model perhaps. So we start with, the basic format is sort of like timed writings that are quick, right? Like 5 to 7 minutes. So people can experience the effects of journaling almost immediately. So I would start with, having them journal about who they are, what they're doing in that class, and what they want from that class, so something that focuses them on the present, and is very easily accessed, right? It's not hard to think about who they are and what they're doing there.
Yeah,
And
totally.
that can serve as a way to introduce, reading that aloud or sharing the experience of writing it can help introduce one another, the classmates to each other. I would talk about sort of guidelines for journaling. So remind them that there's no rules to journaling. There's never a wrong way to journal. There's never really a way to fail. If they are not natural writers or they have a fear of writing, they can always draw a picture that represents their thoughts and
Oh, I
feelings.
love
Or
that.
sometimes, they can write, instead of writing standard, like, from the top of the page across and all the way down, they can write in a circle, or they can write with their non-dominant hand, or, like, I would encourage them to break rules, because they're so attuned, right, that writing is this like serious thing. And I think especially in high school, writing is held, like, the books that they read, writers are held up as, these famous exemplars, right? And we're supposed to analyze them, and we're supposed to, like, understand that their importance and that kind of thing. But truthfully, what they don't learn in high school, what they should learn, is that so many of our most treasured and famous writers wrote journals, that their writing was motivated by a desire for healing, from Alice Walker to Virginia Woolf. These writers really wrote to heal themselves. They didn't write to become famous writers. They wrote to heal themselves. And I think when students know that and hear that, then literature and writing becomes more accessible to them, so that the journaling process can be a part of, becoming more interested in literature and writing.
That's
I don't know if
fascinating.
that answers your questions, but
Yeah, it totally answers my
yeah.
question. There's a couple of little things that I did want to touch on, but that's fascinating. I did not know that writing has been used as a healing tool for authors for so long. That's
Yes.
great. And so when you are like with the students, are you asking them to show you anything? Do you have them share with each other with you? Like, how does that go?
Sharing is always optional. The journal is meant to be private. It's not meant for an audience. But sometimes it does help to ask for volunteers to share, because when people do share, it just creates this sense of vulnerability, right? Like, if
Yeah.
you hear someone else being vulnerable in your journal, you most likely are going to identify with them in some way, and you're most likely going to, um, something will move you, or inspire you. And so I think, only by a volunteer. I would never force a student to read their journal, because it's supposed to be private. But another thing you can do, is something called the feedback right. So in Journal to the Self, we do this where, so you have a journaling prompt, let's say, and they're writing for 5 to 7 minutes. And at the end of that time period, or whatever time period it is, you ask them to stop and to read over what they wrote, and to write for a couple of minutes and write down a few sentences of feedback. What did they notice
Mhm.
about the writing? What did they learn from the writing? What surprised them about the writing? And oftentimes students feel more comfortable sharing the feedback than they do sharing the actual writing. So it can be a way to create sharing and create community without exposing students who don't want to be exposed.
Oh, wow, that's a great tool. That's kind of like going inside, but around it. So to speak.
Exactly. Yes. Creating a universal experience,
Right.
and also creating sort of like a metacognitive skill, like, they're not
Oh,
just
wow.
thinking about what's going on the page, but they're thinking about their own thinking, right? And I think that's an incredibly useful tool, critical tool.
Very useful. And so if you guys are doing these, if your classes, twice a week or whatever, 3 times a week, how do you think of the prompts? How did you come up with your prompts?
This particular workshop that I teach it meets 6 times for 2 hours at a time. So, and it is a toolbox class. So the prompts are related to these varying like tools of journaling that were pioneered by Kathleen Adams. So it's everything from character sketches, like writing a sketch of yourself or someone else from your perspective or from their perspective,
Mhm.
or writing dialogues between yourself and anything else, really, a feeling, an inanimate object, you, and maybe you're struggling with relationship with that person or a person you're grieving or your higher self or God. You can write, I mean, these are just examples of the kinds of tools, but that's specific to Journal to the Self. I mean, those are copyrighted because they were created by this woman. But there's really no limit in terms of prompts. One of the things you can do with students is have them generate their own. So you can have like a whole journal session where all they do is write like a list of 100 prompts that they want to ask themselves. And then those 100 prompts can be the prompts for the term or whatever.
That is such a brilliant idea. That is just, I would never have thought about that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like that's just the way to go because who in high school likes another adult to tell them what to do? Like, they don't need someone else telling them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they know the answers about what they want to write about. Oh,
Exactly.
that's so precious.
Yeah.
I love that little nugget. Gosh, I feel like this has been super useful because I mean, from start to kind of, finish, this could feel I could do that for a whole semester, honestly, if because teachers usually get like 5 to 10 minutes of time that they can take away from the academics during the hour, or most of our classes now are 90 minutes.
Okay.
Every like they have broken them up every other day, so like this would be able to be stretched out over at least a semester,
Mm-hmm.
depending on if they enjoyed it, if they found it useful. It could stretch over a year.
Right.
Um, and so I think one of the things that I feel like is sort of unique with our students now is that they don't really write down a lot of things. Do your students use actual paper and pen, or, actual journals?
It varies. It's open. I mean, there's a workbook that comes with the class, and the workbook has spaces where you can write, in the workbook. Some people write on their actual paper journals, but for others, they're more comfortable digitally. They journal on the computer or on their smartphone. So it's really wide open, whatever medium the student feels most comfortable in.
Right, because just them sitting down and getting anything on paper, even if I'm not seeing it, this is not to be graded. This is just a time for them. So even if they're just using it to zen out on their computer and stare at a blank page, that's how they want to use it. And even if they catch just a little glimpse, right, of what
Hmm.
someone else shares, or hopefully what I say, there could be a seed that's planted, and eventually they, because I'm talking about students who just, they're usually to the max of like stuff to do.
Yes.
So anytime you give something that's optional, the option is usually to not do it.
Yeah, of course.
But I think, yeah, pairing it with the 5 minutes and then like another 5 minute follow-up of discussion,
Hmm.
they're
Yeah.
participating whether they know it or not, right?
Yeah, I would always do it in my community college composition classes. I would have the first 10 minutes of class be journaling because inevitably people come in late and they're shuffling papers and they're getting their book bags situated, and I just use it as a time where, this is journaling time. And so people who are already there are going to be like into their journals, and get more out of it. But it ensures that there's always like a warm up, a journaling warm up to the writing class to get their juices flowing.
I love that. Is there anything that in the question guide that I sent, is there anything, I'm trying to think if there's anything that I missed that I could find like even more useful, or was there anything that you wanted to ask me?
I'm going to just share something with you because, oh, can you enable screen sharing for me? Because I could share this with you. If not, I can email it to you. Sorry, I'm just turning the light on now. I should have had it on the whole time.
Oh,
Um,
that looks really good. Wow, that lighting is awesome. Okay.
no, I turned it off because there was a glare on my glasses, but now I think it's better. Um, it says host is disabled participant screen sharing.
Yep, let's see if I can do, uh, for now, I'm just going to transfer to make you host so that it's easy
Okay.
because I don't see the prompt for that.
If not, I can email it to you.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Oh,
Yeah,
here
because,
we go. Okay.
yeah.
Let me see if I can find it. Okay. I'm going to share this with you. So the the research on the benefits of journaling are pretty astounding, and I think it's worth it to look at these for teachers because, I mean, a lot of students are struggling with trauma or disability or poverty or all kinds of things in the classroom, and those things can undermine academic performance, right? So this is just a few articles on the benefits of journaling for physical and emotional well-being. So it boosts, this is all scientifically proven. It boosts mindfulness, memory, and communication skills. It can improve sleep and self-confidence. Journal writing can reduce stress and anxiety and thereby boost immunity. Literally, it boosts your immunity such that if you're sick or injured, journaling about it can help you heal faster. It can also help you move past emotional trauma and improve your mood. It can increase, it can increase an overall sense of well-being and reduce depressive symptoms. It can fortify resilience in the face of traumatic events. It can moderate the effects of isolation. So they did research on astronauts in space, and they found that journal writing moderated, the negative effects of being completely isolated in space. And this is just a great link, which I can send you. It goes over 83 benefits of journaling for depression, anxiety, and stress. Also, because we're going through such a historic time, I think it's worth mentioning that journal writing is part of how history gets written. So just think of The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, right? So you never know what your journal's contribution to history will be. So I think it's, um, they've found that journal writing is co-equal to psychotherapy in
Oh,
its benefits for anxiety and depression following trauma. And given that a lot of students are dealing with these issues and many of them don't have the resources to go to psychotherapy, I think it's like a wellness practice that should be mandated in schools, actually.
that's incredible to hear. So it's co-equal. So writing down
Yeah.
how you feel, even though you may
Yeah.
not get feedback from your writing from someone else, just writing it
Correct.
down can help with the
Yes.
healing.
Specifically linking feelings to events. So a lot of people mistake journaling as diary writing, and diary writing tends to be like a log of what you did that day, like I did this and then I did that and then I went to school and then I had dinner, right?
Yeah.
That type of journal writing probably won't have the same benefit as psychotherapy. But if you link events in your life to feelings through your writing, that type of writing will have
Mhm.
co-equal benefits to psychotherapy. And it's free. All you need is a pen and paper. It's accessible any time of day. So I think it's a phenomenal wellness practice for students to learn young. I wish I had this, I went through a lot of trauma in my young life, and I wish I had journaling so much earlier.
I love hearing this because I really didn't think about uh I really didn't think about it in terms of having the effects of sort of venting. But when you just said that, I was like, oh, because the feelings get to come out of you. And
Mm-hmm.
then you see them somewhere else. They're literally not
Yes.
in you anymore. They're now on the paper.
Right. Exactly. That's
Whereas with
exactly it.
venting, sometimes we can vent and repeat and sort of obsess by just like venting to many different people the same
Mm-hmm.
story or dialogue. But with
Yeah.
your journal, it's like proof you got it out. And there's visual evidence that you did deal with it in some way.
Right. And a lot of times what happens, with me or with young students is not only that they vent, but that they process, that they change the narrative in some way, right? So here's this traumatic event that happened, but I can see there were actually good things that came out of it too,
Yeah.
or like I'm upset that Mike is dating Sue now, but actually, because I liked Mike, but actually, this was a good thing because I met Joe or whatever, right? There's a shift in narrative that happens, and they say that shift in narrative, those like shocks of awareness, are the things that can produce the healing.
Is this sort of like writing your own story?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're the center of your journal, right? I mean, you can write about anything you want in your journal, but
Yeah.
absolutely, it's a form of autobiography. The only difference is that it's not published, right? It's private, it's for you.
And how about that? Have you ever gone through a time where you're worried about someone finding your journal? I don't know. Like, that's the first thing I think of.
That's a
I
really
think I
good,
have some trauma
yeah.
from that when I was little.
That's such a good point, and I have other students express the same thing. Their sister read their journal when they were young, and they were so traumatized that they didn't write again for 40 years. So I think privacy is a huge concern, especially for kids who may not be in control of their space, right? Anyone can walk into their room, and like mom or sis or whoever can take their stuff, and they don't own their own home or their own car maybe where they could store it. So I think privacy is a really tough one. If you're living with reasonable people, you can announce that you're writing a journal and ask them to respect your privacy and not read it. But a lot of individuals don't live with reasonable people,
They don't. They
And
don't.
so I think it's important to encourage students to have a plan for privacy, whether that's having a secret hiding place, literally locking it away, keeping it in their book bag, or writing digitally with that's in a way that's password protected.
I love that. At least there's an option for the password protection.
Yes. And there's lots of apps and that kind of thing for journaling as
Mhm.
well. I don't personally use them because I'm old fashioned, but there are tons of them out there.
Right. Yeah. I would love to be free enough to write my own journal, write in my own journal. And after we've talked about this, you know, we're the same age. I don't have a journal. And I'm jealous that you
Hmm.
have like all of these years of your journals to look back on. So I just better start.
Yeah, but I mean, I live alone, so I don't have to worry about, is someone gonna like open this box and read my entire life and that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
it is tough, I think, to find that comfort level and that privacy, but that you can start anytime.
And do you go back and read your journals?
Not often enough. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of times I'll be going through something and I think about like, oh, like last year at this time, how was I feeling? And I get to look it up and I'm like, oh, wow, that's what was.
Yeah.
It's helpful for tracking the patterns in your life, but you do have to reread them in order to have that awareness. So
Yeah.
I'm also working on a memoir, and so that is phenomenal to go back. I've gone back now 22 years and started reading from the beginning. I've only made a small dent, but it's it is incredible to have it as a reference,
And do you
especially
write
in
every
that
day
context.
at this
In my
point
journal,
where you are?
I do. I think when I get stressed out with time, and I think COVID and everything that's gone on with the pandemic has made life in general, just like even simple things, it's made more difficult. So I feel,
Yeah.
oddly enough, at this time when I need my journal probably more than ever, it's been more erratic, because I don't know, just like time is compressed and it's harder to find time. But I still do journal several times a week, even if I don't get to it every night.
Yeah, I have my own method of journaling. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah, totally.
So I just, I'll listen to a certain podcast, or sometimes I'll watch different YouTube videos on whatever I'm struggling with.
Okay.
And I write down in just an open notes on my iPhone my thoughts about it, that how it pertains to my life
Yes.
situation, and like how to use the tips and advice that they have, but just specifically the little parts that I've been missing. And then I'll have maybe some letters to people. I'll have another notes of like letters to people of what I would say if, whatever situation occurred, or if there's something on my mind, I want to express it, but I don't have the words yet. And I'll just write these. I have long, long notes
Mm-hmm.
that just make me cringe sometimes when I look back at them. So, yeah. Would you consider that a form of journaling too?
Oh, absolutely. All of that is
Okay.
journaling.
Okay.
All of that is journaling, and it's very valid. I mean, what you're doing with the letters is one of the techniques that I teach in the class, the unsent letters, because right, you're before you like just talk to someone with raw emotion, right? You're processing and figuring out how you want to say it and what you want to say, and sometimes just venting it in writing makes you like, maybe I don't need to talk to them right away, or maybe I got it out, right? So that's absolutely a valid, and so
Okay.
is the reaction to the videos. I do that with books, or I mean, it's like you're processing, you're meaning making, right? You're having an experience and you're making meaning from it, and that's really what journaling is. So it is journaling what you're doing, you're just doing it in your phone.
Wow, now I know why when I talk to you about my personal life, I feel like I talk to a therapist. Because you've been doing this for 20 years. This is awesome. Gosh, Rachel. Yeah, I just want to thank you so much.
You're
I feel like I've
welcome.
learned a lot already, and I feel like this video is something that could be a little mini crash course for people. And if they have, more questions, or just want to explore more,
Yeah.
where would they go?
So the Center for Journal Therapy is a great resource, and their partner organization is called the Therapeutic Writing Institute. So you can take online courses in journaling from very like different schools of thought. There's all kinds of like methods and philosophies about journaling. So teachers could take courses if they wanted. They also offer something called Journalversity, which is like a free open source like
Oh,
has all kinds of online resources and activities. So I would check those three. And then I'm not sure, um, the Los Angeles Writing Project is, as I mentioned, it's a satellite of the National Writing Project, and they do a lot of work on bringing journaling into the classroom for K through 12. So teachers can check with, their local branch or offshoot of the National Writing Project and might find resources there as well.
Okay. And wait, and so you're teaching this workshop at Pasadena City College, which is they can just Google that if any teachers were interested in learning. Because I think that as
Mhm.
I've learned from you, that makes it easier for me to teach it. So I just find like, oh, okay, this is an easy way for someone to learn. And as teachers, we get unit credit points.
Yeah. Yeah, the course, it's called Journals of the Self. I teach it at PCC Extension, which is affiliated with Pasadena City College. And right now it's online because the campus is closed for the foreseeable future. So people can take it from anywhere in the world. I have a student from Kuwait right now. So
Oh,
you
thanks.
can log in from anywhere. And it's to register, you go to pcclearn.org. And I'll be teaching it again in September.
All right. Thank you so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome.
I'm going to stop the recording, but I just wanted
Okay.
to tell you that you've been amazing and I always learn something from you. You're like my sister, so thank you.
Thank you.